Hey everybody,
Everybody,
agency operator
agency operator.
Pasha here with Mike Danford, good old friend of mine from Adverio. How you doing, Mike?
Great. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. So glad you made it. Looks like we have a couple different things to talk about, but you and I have known each other for a number of years. Had many calls talking about all kinds of things from what's working, what's not working, how things are changing, and so I think there's a lot of good conversation there. But before we dive in, could you share a little bit about your story and how you ended up being with Adverio for all these years? And your position has changed quite a bit too. That's been kind of cool to watch that transformation. So share what you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. So I've been in the space for about 12 years, and I studied undergrad for risk management insurance, spent several years in insurance, and then had fun, but I contracted MRSA and was like, hey, this is not really what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I started out getting into real estate, and I said, oh, okay. About that time when the Amazon, getting on the FBA was a big thing. Went through, I think it was the Amazing Selling Machine, ASM, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
So that was kind of the way to get into it at that time for a lot of us. And, started my own business, our own FBA store, and, realized that there's a lot of opportunity there. And was having someone run my advertising and marketing, which was a lot less sophisticated at that time, admittedly, and was like, hey, this is just numbers. You couldn't even do copy or headlines or anything of that nature, creatives, etc. So I was like, hey, I can figure this out. So started doing that, and thanks to Facebook groups, etc., posting and sharing success and tactics and whatnot. And a few was like, hey, I'd love for you to be able to do that for me. Would you do it? Sure. Kind of the rest is history from there, where it's like, okay, how do I package this? How do I do this, etc. And then, to your point with my role, I was on my own for a few years, and then started doing some white labeling and working for other agencies or other providers and et cetera, because I didn't really want to get into the marketing side of it. I just want to do the PPC and the algorithms before all the SaaS and platforms came out. And then I bumped into Alden, which is my partner here at Adverio, and we kind of had two businesses in real lines. We were kind of not really competing with each other, but playing in the same box, et cetera. It's like, hey, we could do more if we come together. And the rest is history from there. As far as the role change, it's still changing. It's like almost every day it evolves, right? It's like, hey, there's new opportunities. Let's figure this out. And I'll say that where we've kind of niched ourselves is working with mid 7-figure to mid 8-figure brands that are stagnant or having some kind of decline in their revenue or inability to launch new products, et cetera. And they're like, hey, what used to work 10 years ago doesn't work now. How can we do this? And then, a large pain point for them is prioritization. When you have, we work with really large catalogs where we have some brands that have tens of thousands of products, or others will have a couple thousand. That becomes really challenging. So we built systems for that to leverage for those brands, and that's been fun. That's definitely one of the hats that I wear. I love the challenge. I love the tech that has developed over the last 12 to 15 years that makes a lot of this easier to share with other brands and agencies, et cetera. So I love where I'm at now. I'm not sure what the next 5 or 10 years will look like. It's kind of it's hard to see past your nose sometimes, but definitely excited to continue on the path.
Cool. And you guys were really working on some kind of cutting edge technology back in those days. I remember when we first met, you were sharing all these systems, and it was pretty robust. And I'm just curious how that has changed with all the new upgrades. Like you said, things have evolved on the tech side quite a bit. And so your systems naturally have probably evolved too. And then, with the addition of additional marketplaces and other services that you guys have added, how has the tech part really kind of caught up with it?
Yes, that's great. We were one of the first, I guess, at least in our group, that dug into having our own, GPT API access on the back end before it even really became mainstream, and understanding what large language models are and how to impact from, SEO to advertising to et cetera. Like, how can we scale? We have 80,000 products for a brand that we can't go manually into each of these campaigns. And, I'm sorry, each of these titles, bullet points, et cetera, and do it. So how do we create like these recipes and hit the Pareto? Obviously, we can see some of that happening with some of these other AI platforms that are out there with the SEO and titles, and like, yeah, that really isn't good. Like, I just saw one that Smart Scout posted earlier today, I think, or maybe it was yesterday, and it was the Death Water, where, hey, they're clearly using AI, and it's a big name brand, obviously, unique marketing aspect and stuff. So that's definitely the big part, is able to do more. It's just, how do you moderate it? Like, the moderation is definitely the most challenging part now. So with that, it's always trying to improve it. The more access, the more data that we have under our purview, the better it becomes. The more we see things, we can also start to see trends from that, because when we do things, hey, this isn't really working anymore. Why is that? Oh, well, Amazon's changed this, or this category has a very unique limiting factor, or hey, you can't. It's better to have fewer characters than more characters for this, or we're digging into Walmart, and Walmart has a really good guide on hey, it should be brand name, product name, use, attribute, one keyword, those kinds of things, those little formulas. So we try to bring those back into Amazon. And then they'll change the back end keywords, add 250, remove 250, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely staying on top of it. I'd say, like, as a little bit of plug, one of our new exciting projects that I'm not really sure where it's going to go, it's something we played around with, is Amazon's recognition software, which is their AI. So it's basically scanning all your images and videos that are on your listing, any ads, etc., and it's scraping the text from that. And that's how we're looking at another way of indexing and improving, like the hidden indexing for listings, and making sure that Amazon knows from our images what's the most relevant searches to go after. So how many keywords can we place in there? Does it make sense to duplicate, or where do we put it in the image, etc.? Like, do we get duplication of the same keyword or same word in the image, and how do we do that? So it's a lot of fun, and that's directly from Amazon. So it's pretty cool to see behind the scenes, under the hood of, this is what they are scanning or reading in these images, and how can we improve those?
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how there's all these little nuances for optimization, right? Like little tweaks like that, like putting in keywords into the metadata of an image can have such a big impact on your catalog and your ranking, right? And so it's kind of the only real way that you can get ahead once you get to a certain level. Like, if you guys are working with those 7-figure sellers, any micro detail like that could give you that edge. So that's super cool. And also, I know that back in the day, you guys were really more focused on the PPC side, specifically for Amazon. And now it's gotten more involved with content, catalog optimization, and now these other platforms. So it must be that you guys have built a pretty robust team at this point. How was that, just like that scaling process, like manpower, managing all the people, mid-level management, and getting all that sorted? I mean, that's the real hurdle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely where part of the role changes. And like I said, I mentioned I listened to Steven's appearance, I think it was last week, et cetera. And he was, I liked how he mentioned, 8 person per person, 8 people under 1 person is kind of the capacity. And that's, we're trying to figure that formula out as well. And it just helps with, balancing. That's more like an HR role that I'm not used to. So we have an operator that comes in and helps us with that. Just to kind of understand, make sure we're within capacity, and how roles change, similar to what we're talking about, how tech has changed. You're still in the same space, but it's what part of the tech levers you're pulling are different. And it's the same way with our human capital. It's, hey, yes, you're still creating images, you're still creating, copy, you're managing advertising, but you have these other tools, and it's now, what can you do the most with your time, or where do you get the most squeeze, the most juice for your squeeze now? And that's always what we're trying to ask for ourselves. And similarly, it's trying to create or expand a service line, and give that, that freedom and autonomy to someone that maybe don't have the years of experience with, or working alongside of. So we try to promote within before we bring someone new in. And that works out pretty well. And then it's just, nice to have someone that has a background that specifically, like, may have built a product or an offering that is exactly what we're looking for. And they've done it, once or twice, where they've worked with, I wouldn't say a competitor, but someone that kind of has a generally, similar offer in certain aspects of it. And then just trying to give them the freedom and autonomy to create within their own domain. Hey, we have data scientists, you have access to them. If you feel like if you ask yourself, this is really boring, or this is challenging, or I don't like having to sit here and do this, click this button, you come over to data scientists and see if they can fix that for you. Because we don't want you doing that. We want you to, 1, enjoy your job, and 2, focus on things that are more impactful in the business, or where the human element needs to be there, and get rid of the automation, or improve the automation. So It's an ongoing process. I would say if I could do it over again, it would be bring in an operator much sooner than we did. Kind of wearing that hat in the beginning was okay, but then that's not my strongest suit, if you will. Definitely an implementer, but systematizing and building outside of what I've been exposed to was definitely a challenge. When you bring someone in that has built multiple agencies, whether it's a marketing agency or other type of creative team, man, it's just eye-opening what they bring in, all the questions. Very similar to what we do for advertising, right? We see hundreds of brands, and we're not just pigeonholed or focused on one set of campaigns or one set of products or one category, but hey, we get to see hundreds of categories, hundreds and thousands of products. This does not work. It's never worked. Or hey, this usually works. Or hey, this works all the time. And we're able to bring that. Similarly, I love that when we can bring someone that has that experience. It's the learning curve is so much shorter for our team, for myself. And I love being able to ask the team to help me in areas where I'm like, hey, this is not my strong suit. I haven't done this in a while. We were talking the other day on our marketing team, like I'm stuck in web 1.0. Like sometimes I go back and this is how we used to do blog articles back in, early 2000s, and it's totally different now. Right. But it's always fun. So it's definitely, a growing pain for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my agency, what I found has worked pretty well is really having like a strategist that has that experience and building an entire workforce around them, because they know their things, they know what moving parts to put together, and the learning curve is just so much shorter, like you said. And I think that generally that seems to be the way that things are moving now, because there's so many people that want to do contracting, and agencies are at different stages, and so you can't always offer like a full time position at this super high salary with benefits, and you're just kind of growing. So there just seems to be a lot of fractionalized opportunity that people are giving one another, and as long as it works and the job is getting done, then it just evolves. So it's an interesting paradigm that we're in. I think 10-15 years ago, building a company and hiring was a totally different thing than it is today, and people are just more open to building schedules on the internet, and hiring remote, even across the world if you need to, as long as, like I said, if the job is getting done, it's getting done, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned, it's how it's changed the last 10 to 15 years. One, where to find talent, how to bring them in, this whole like gig economy. And then obviously COVID kind of spread that, if you will. And I think you and I've talked in the past where like LinkedIn has been phenomenal for us to find talent that's already engaged with us, kind of knows us. We kind of like we know them, and we can kind of see their past interactions, and did they create content, how do they think, et cetera. And then it's just a way to cut down the noise, as opposed to using like a ZipRecruiter or something where others probably have great success with that, just not for us. But it definitely changes for sure.
Yep, absolutely. So with regards to the other marketplaces that you guys are kind of expanding into, you mentioned Walmart. I know there's a couple of other ones. Um, from the data that you guys are collecting, what are you seeing in terms of those marketplaces in comparison with Amazon? Is Amazon still going to be, number one forever, or do you see that kind of shifting? Not crystal ball, 2024 is Amazon dead type of question, but I mean, generally other marketplaces, they have their place. They have their, corner of things. So people want to go there for some specific reason that Amazon is not serving that function, even though Amazon tries to do everything. So I'm just curious, how much opportunity really is there outside of, oh, I have my website, I have my Amazon channel, is it worth it to do anything else?
Yeah, I'll answer, or I'll share something and then kind of come back and answer that directly. So I was reading, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and I might misquote the brand. I want to say it was the Spike Ball brand or something of that nature, like a seasonal, summer seasonal product that obviously blew a lot of virality, and just cool product. We even have one, right? And he's kind of going against the grain right now, or thinking about going against the grain, where they start out D2C. I don't think they actually are available or don't sell directly on Amazon right now. And they're in retail and some other places as well. But the gist that I got from his post and his question, and maybe I misunderstood it, but regardless, is having all the channels and managing everything that comes with D2C when you're doing it yourself, and it's still enticing for even a large brand like that to come back to Amazon and just simplify things. It's like, hey, I'm gonna ship everything just in Amazon. Yes, the fees may be different, maybe more, whatever it may be, and I'm kind of beholden to them. But life is just simpler. Operations are just simpler. I don't have to ship to here, hold here, push here, wait for this, or, ooh, this, is just, or we have a different UPC versus a FNSKU or a barcode or whatever it may be, and just change the packaging, or I can't put the insert into my Amazon because it's not allowed to do that versus my D2C where I can kind of promote, et cetera. So very interesting to see that. I think you're going to have a lot of transition both ways from more of a D2C model coming over to the marketplace. And they're going to have people who are going to like, hey, I don't want to pay the 30, 40% or whatever the category is up to now, some 50%, right? I'm going to go over to D2C and see if I can cut that, see if the grass is greener on the other side. We do see that, for us specifically, it's about, taking a brand that most commonly is already on Amazon, getting them on to the Walmart or Target if they have invitation. Then obviously helping them with their D2C traffic and kind of understanding what the campaigns are and kind of helping them separate that data when you start commingling across platforms, understand, is the tide raising all ships, right? That's definitely a challenge, it's, and with that, it's very category specific. I mean, even Target is very limited in what they'll take in right now, because I guess it was a year and a half ago, right before Christmas, where they had to liquidate and move a lot of inventory because it didn't move in Q4. And they're like, oh, we missed that, right? So now we're just looking at pet and baby brands, the ones that really kind of work for this. And it'll just be interesting to see, for Walmart, a brand that does extremely well on Amazon or their own website may not do well on Walmart because of the target audience and locations and if they have a Walmart subscription versus an Amazon subscription versus not, et cetera. There's no one size fits all. It's definitely a lot more due diligence to understand. We used to say 5 to 20% of your revenue on Amazon you could get on Walmart. Well, we're seeing brands with 40, 50, 60% on Walmart versus Amazon, but it's so random. We're still trying to work on like, hey, how do you know that? Like how can you anticipate that? And we have some theories, but obviously we're trying to get the data to back it up to better solidify that. But it's definitely a fun process. And then, a brand that's on Walmart, Target, and Amazon, each platform will perform totally different. What works on one platform doesn't even work on the other. And they're all marketplaces. We have brands that'll come to us and they're like, hey, here's our top 200, 300 keywords in Google that have done really well on D2C. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. Just be prepared. That's probably not how the search traffic is inside of Amazon. There may be some overlap, a little Venn diagram, if you will, but and then vice versa, going out to like, hey, whoa, we really got to speak more and engage more and say, why us? Like right in the beginning, because they're maybe window shopping as opposed to just shopping, or they're not as far down the funnel when they're on Google or depending on where the placement is, et cetera. So it's definitely interesting. And then, on that from Google, D2C, et cetera, the new release they just pushed out where, Google will now allow you to do the Performance Max directly to your listing as opposed to having to go through your website or some other stuff. So it's really cool to see the two giants kind of figure out how to create less friction. We're in the game together, maybe, or they are in the game together, if you will. So, yeah.
Cool. So if I have to ask you, right, you're doing well on Amazon US, and you had a choice between expanding to other marketplaces, Target, Walmart, or going to the EU and tackling the EU5, shipping, doing all the VAT compliance, all that stuff, right? To at least two places, because of Brexit, you have to ship to the UK, other EU territories. So that's obviously a big headache, big investment of inventory, but the opportunity is pretty big there. Or you say, all right, let me just take more market share in the US on these other platforms, knowing what what would be your option?
It's hands down, it's going to be going to other marketplaces in your demographic region, or your geographic region that you're already in. You already have the infrastructure for. It's much easier, we've seen, for you to ship an extra shipment over to this warehouse or move it from this warehouse and place it here. Once you go across the pond, or even once you go across the northern border, we have a brand, an 8-figure brand that, like, man, how do we get this? How do we figure this out? I mean, the VAT and the fees and the shipping and the delays and everything else. And we have to buy a property in Canada in order to do it? Is that how we do this? Or does it make sense to? What's the maximum exposure we can have if we do all that in Canada and trying to run those projections, et cetera? because they're a brand that really relies on, I would call it tentpole or events where, it's encouraging, 6 to 8 week build up to it. And then, the event happens and then the demand just goes away. Well, it really kind of dies a couple of days before that in the US because of shipping delays, et cetera. But when in Canada, if you're not shipping through their systems, a 7-day shipping doesn't work. You kind of miss the meat of the sales event. And you're kind of just limited on what you can do. So long answer to say, wherever you have your operations and your physical setup already working, just figure out how to get more of that to other places and start there. We do have brands that go across the pond both ways. It's a different process. It is nice to see, when you do your ace and match and you can get certain reviews and certain things to kind of follow around on each platform, that does help, where that used to not be the case for us. But still, it's just a totally different market. It's a lot more headache if you gotta be willing to do it, right? It's kind of like, which one do you want? And then the other part is like, what's the market size? What makes sense to do that? And how can we do that?
Yeah. The reason I ask is because when I think about, all right, why would a brand be able to do really well in one US marketplace and not in another? What comes to mind is, all right, Amazon's saturated with competition and Walmart isn't. Simple as that, right? I mean, probably there's a lot more to it. You guys have some data to back that up, but that's my thesis. And so I say, all right, well, the same is true with EU marketplaces, but the audience might be even bigger, right? Like you have the entire continent of Europe at hand, like waiting to buy on Amazon. And if there's no competition at all, and you have tons of competition in the US, then maybe it does make sense to go over. So I really do think it's a case by case basis type of thing. But um, I do agree that if you have infrastructure in the US, it probably would be the first move. And also, with external traffic, you mentioned PMAX going straight to Amazon, right? Instead of going to a website. Conversion rates are going to be different. That was another question that I'm interested in asking is like, what are you guys seeing? Does it make more sense to send to a Shopify store? Not, a Shopify store, not a website that's reverting to Amazon listings, because I've seen that type of dynamic too. But someone who just wants to capture that sale on their Shopify site because they'll make more money, they don't have to pay Amazon as much. But then again, you have all the authentic reviews on your Amazon listing, so conversion rates are a little bit different. I'm curious, what are you guys really seeing with that?
Yeah, so for right now, when we look at it, we really have two primary buckets, especially because most brands that we're running or looking into their Google traffic, they do have a pretty reasonable D2C presence already. They may have started there and we're just now trying to figure out Amazon or vice versa, and they hit the ground running. First year they're selling seven figures just because they have so much traffic and there's so much search traffic for them all over all the search engines, whether it's a marketplace engine or a Google or et cetera. And all that to say that we break it up and we still want to drive as much traffic that is not necessarily in the Amazon funnel to their D2C. As soon as you can, with semantics, they'll specifically search this product on Amazon. Okay, well, that traffic, I'm going to go ahead and if I'm going to try to bridge that and capture that and put my brand tailored, my attribution tag and tracking and other things on there, I'm going to drive you straight to Amazon because you're already thinking about Amazon. If we don't have that, or we don't have Walmart, or we don't have Target or whatever else, then we're going to push you to our platform. And then for some of those brands, depending on where they're at, if someone kind of falls out of the funnel or, where you want to go back and retarget, drop-offs, then you'll say, hey, give them an incentive to go over to Amazon or as a coupon, or, hey, you got a Prime Day coming up or something like that. You want to hit them because they didn't convert, for whatever reason, maybe it was credibility or otherwise on your website, but you still have that access. See if you can get them to purchase on Amazon, etc. We're still testing out some of those to see it's really hard to track a lot of that. And then there's a latency between it. You don't want it to be too cold where, hey, it's been like 3 months, and say, look, let's see if they'll get purchase on there. It's definitely a recency bias you want to come to that. So lots of new campaigns being tested for that. I'm really excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to see what everyone else is seeing as well, because we all have our different ideas and ways we want to do it.
Yeah. I ask that question a lot, and I have to answer that question a lot too on behalf of the things that I manage. And my answer is always like yours, where it's like, it's such a case by case type of thing, right? Depends on the brand. It depends on how established they are. and you really, the only way to know is just to test it out. The only thing that's a little difficult is that attribution is a little bit not that accurate, right? Like I'm finding the Amazon attribution, there's holes in it. There's like delays or double booking, so yeah, do you have any tricks or anything that you guys have discovered to like help with that, with really getting accurate results from your attribution data?
I would say that if, when possible, we like to concentrate budgets around an objective, meaning um, let's go a little heavy and aggressive to see, and maybe where we kind of anticipate it being a low season or a low traffic time, and let's try to reduce the noise that's in the platform so we can see what happens, and understand what's going on. Let's not run any extra promos or these other campaigns. Pull that out, and see what happens from that. Or do we have brand tailored promotions where we know we're kind of engaged, and like how do we get into that? And obviously going to DSP and AMC, and it's a whole another situation. But I would say that's what we try to do, is kind of pull back on a few other things, get some stability there, and then push a little more aggressive than we would obviously want to sustain, to see if you see new traffic or external traffic coming over. Even if you get your clicks, or your, depending on what kind of campaign you're using or tracking you're using, you may not always get what the conversion is of it because it's some attribution windows and whatnot. But at least see if the traffic is more interested, and if that does work and get you over there. And then you can kind of look at your conversion rates, comparison to that. Just try to be a high enough percentage that you're like, you can make some assumptions, because it's still an assumption at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're right. The more data that you have to work with, the better the general idea is, right? You're never going to pinpoint exactly, but I like that method. You mentioned AMC. That's something that we're also trying to figure out, get our head around. I had a call with the Amazon team around AMC long time ago, and they were explaining all of that to me, and I was like, I really don't understand how to utilize this. Really, it's a lot of good information. It's straight from Amazon. They see the big picture, and you can get a lot of good stuff out of it. But in terms of like formatting that raw data into something that's actionable has been a big challenge. And I think that we're getting much closer. I think a lot of the big tool providers like PackView, I had a call recently with XMars. Seems like Quartile's doing it too. Many big providers are really kind of synthesizing that data into something that can be useful. So I'm curious how you guys are really utilizing AMC data, and is that paired with anything on the DSP side too?
Yeah, so I'd say it's the juice squeeze ratio again. You can get so lost in AMC, and to do what we really like to do, and filter out and reduce as much noise as possible, gets hard, because if your audience isn't big enough and you try to trim it down, then you're limited, and AMC and Amazon will be like, nope, can't do it, because we think you might be able to reverse engineer who these shoppers and buyers are. So it's been really difficult to get down to that, and remove those layers of the onions, to get down to the core of what is and isn't working. And honestly, you do have to have a really high volume of DPVs and traffic, and having multiple different types of ads going across, where you can actually control a little bit of the journey, really getting into the upper funnel if you can, et cetera. If you're not doing that, it's really hard to glean valuable information from AMC, both because you don't have a quantity, and then the quality of the data is really not reliable, or not really insightful, if you will. I mean, we even have brands that do have tens of thousands of products, or 1,000 products, or even a couple hundred products, and they're spending millions a year on Amazon. And when you go in and look at the back end, you're still not a ton of insights. You might get a little bit from a campaign, or should I push a little more here, or generally speaking, did that campaign perform better because of this or that? Yes. But it's still very minute. It's a lot of effort. It can be expensive. To your point, it's complicated. They built a little editor in there, and that's helpful. You have some platforms that have built like preform templates, if you will, to help you with that. It's still very interesting. To get in there and roll up your sleeves. It's still something that we are tackling and learning, and constantly, diving into, and kind of communicating and seeing what works. And again, I think it's the most impactful for a brand that has a significant amount of traffic.
Yeah, and that does come back to our main topic, which is like moving from that 7 to 8 figure. I think that with smaller brands is just overkill. There's not enough data there for them to really utilize it effectively. Same with DSP. think you have to be at a certain level for that to even make sense, because otherwise you're still on $1, like DSP is $2.23, right? So you got to focus on that. So kind of bringing it back to our original topic, like if I was a client, prospective client, and I'm saying, hey, I have this 7-figure account, I really want to make it to 8 by next year, what would be the plan? Like, what are the really like lines of attack that you would kind of implement to make that happen in the most efficient way possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to something you mentioned earlier, how we used to be, advertising and marketing intensive, and now we have different channels and looking at external and trying to offer that as a full suite. And it's become more and more important for that. If I'm asked a similar question of how do I go from 7 to 8, and even an 8-figure brand that's like, hey, how do I get to the next set of 8 figures? You have to do a little bit of everything. You can't just, get a couple of cent clicks. Those are gone. Now it's dollars and clicks on Amazon, intra Amazon. So every time they offer a new feature, whether it's creator connections, which I know that may not be as glamorous as the other affiliate marketings, et cetera, but you still pull that. You get that little answer and you let Amazon know, hey, we believe in you, Amazon. We're willing to try whatever you give us. Or you have sponsored display video, or STV or any of those other levers. You got to pull them. Yes, they may not work. Yes, it may take a while. But that's how you understand and answering a lot of the questions for your own brand, and not focusing on shiny object syndrome, right? It's, hey, let's go to AMC. Okay. Yes, we can check that out. You probably can qualify and it makes sense to AMC or DSP. But let's look at your sponsored products, your sponsored brands, sponsored ads, brand tailored promotions, creator connection, UGC, all of these other levers. Are you pulling those? Well, we pulled them. Okay. How much did you spend? $100. Okay, you're multi-million-dollar brand. You got to spend a little bit more than $100 to consider something to work or not to work. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where having an agency come in that has experience across multiple categories, across different brands, different size catalogs, and being able to say, hey, yes, it takes $10,000 before it works. You got to have this many detailed page views before you actually get a large enough sample, because of the way the campaign works. It doesn't go through the full process by the time you're trying to measure it, et cetera. All of that to say, for us, we go down to the basics. So many brands don't do the basics. And the basics are so basic that it's kind of hard to have that conversation with the brand and say, hey, guess what we're going to do in the first 6 weeks? We're going to do everything you were supposed to do 10 years ago because you haven't done it. Or you did it 10 years ago, you stopped doing it a couple of years ago because it didn't make sense or it wasn't working because of COVID and whatnot. You haven't turned it back on. It's time to turn it back on. It's improved. Amazon's always trying to improve and fix and create new audiences, et cetera. So get back in that. Look at your market basket analysis. What else is commonly being purchased? I get the question all the time, like, hey, Mike, what should we look at? We got R&D. We're great. We're aggressive. We want to push. Okay, awesome. Well, have you looked at what else is purchased with your products? Well, what is that? Where do we find that? I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm imagining you're using 3P tools, or you're looking at, if you're in retail, you're looking at what's kind of working there, and you're playing around. But I'm like, man, Amazon is telling you what people are purchasing with your products, both at an ASIN level. And we pull engrams in where we're like, hey, let's look at the titles and kind of understand, yes, it's not the same product, but it's 200 brands that are purchasing, and it is a very similar product. It's like, oh, we should probably offer our own or bundle that, put a virtual bundle, et cetera. Are you doing virtual bundles? How do you test packaging? How do you test this? And they don't do anything. It's like they spray and pray and put it up, and what worked on one platform doesn't work on another. Are you testing it? Split testing? Obviously, that's a big thing, and Amazon has that built in. And they don't run a split test long enough. I mean, the list can go on and on and on, and it's really just kind of going through, and being kind of a root cause analysis and understanding what are you doing. And the big thing is, it's not what are you doing and not doing. It's also understanding why they don't do it or why they haven't done it. Understanding that fear, or we got burned. We worked with someone else who we put a lot of money in. We built this beautiful video and it just didn't work. Okay, that's one video. Let's try another video. Or how can we clip that up? Is it okay? It's a 2-minute video. Well, that's probably a problem. Let's do a 20-second video and see what happens. Get right to the punch. So just things like that, and it's really understanding that and helping them navigate that, because a lot of times they have the bigger brands have the resources, and they are getting all of these notifications and tools, et cetera. Just like Steven said on yours last week, is now they just need to know what to do. And that's what our goal is, in saying, hey, I know you're getting a lot of information overload, drinking from a fire hydrant, all that, but this is what generally works. And once we go in there, we have to go and make other decisions as we go in there. And then let's work up. Let's not go straight into AMC. Let's get you stabilized here. So when you get to the AMC or DSP level, you know if it does or doesn't work, because it gets more complicated as you start doing that to understand, what does and doesn't work, or how does it impact, because it starts getting commingled and attribution gets really challenging, et cetera. So that was a long answer.
No, it's good. It's good. No, to me, being this imaginary prospective client, it's kind of a relief to hear something that's like very grounded and reasonable. Meaning, all right, let's focus on the things which are the most important. Let's get the listing right, from the graphic and textual side on the front end to like the back end, all that keyword stuff. Just make sure the data is like right. Amazon has you correct, right category, right? All that metadata. And then, are you spending your ads correctly? Then are you utilizing all the Amazon programs? Then are you on all these other marketplaces? Are you doing external traffic? How does your website look? How does influencer marketing look? It's a very step-by-step type of, I agree. I think there's something wrong when it's like, I have this special hack, because I'm a verified Meta elite partner and I can white label you my status. And, I've gotten all kinds of offers like that, but It's like, that's a cool little hack, but I don't think that's like really, building a brand is a lot harder than a couple little tricks like that. So, I was curious about something you said about UGC. So when you guys do any kind of creator content and advertising influencer marketing campaigns, are you only utilizing Creator Connections, which is Amazon's native system, or are you doing other types of influencer campaigns? And same kind of question as before, is it targeting to Amazon or to the website or both?
Yeah, and it's going to come down to the, I hate to say it, kind of depends, but essentially it's, most of the brands that we're working with are going to be larger and established, especially if we're getting into an 8-figure brand that's already an 8-figure brand. 7-figure brands kind of are growing, et cetera, but they're already doing that, or they kind of already have a flow of the UGC content. And we try to just help them like, hey, don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. Put the round peg in the round hole, which is go from your platform, whatever social platform you're on, do the same thing on Amazon, see if it works. I was just on PPC Den about a month ago with Mike Machine, and that was kind of the thing, is like, hey, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Put the wheel out there first, see what happens, because you may not have to do that. And it's the same way with that. And to answer your question more directly, yes, we do have third parties that we use and recommend for affiliate marketing, influencer marketing, et cetera. It really depends on what the budget is, how aggressive they want to be. And I'll tell you what I've seen, whether it's Creator Connections, a third party, affiliate, influencer, et cetera. It's a quantity over quality. It's getting a lot of those signals, and you don't really know. You can look at a resume of an influencer or affiliate and be like, we're gonna crush it, and that is crickets. And you go to someone else like, I don't really know. Their audience is kind of small, but they figure out something. They post it on the right day, or they put it on TikTok or whatever it may be. Like, whoa, all right, that was awesome ROI. So it's just getting a lot of, taking all the arrows, putting them out, getting them out of your quiver, shooting them one at a time, just getting it done until you find what works, and you try to figure out why. If you can answer why, you can replicate that. You're not always going to be able to answer that, right? But it's being willing to try to find the why so you can replicate that and prevent that moving forward. And again, that's where I'll come back to the agency pieces, where we get to try that across so many brands. I'm like, hey, we've done this across 10 brands. It hasn't worked yet. We're less likely to do that. Let's go somewhere else. Or, hey, this usually works really well for these types of brands or these types of products, or et cetera. If you have a really good creative team, that gives us a lot more leverage. If you have a fun, brand that people are already engaging with, you can be a little more human, if you will, in the marketing, less commercial. So that's always fun. But you don't know that until you get into there. I mean, again, I can go on so many tangents on that, but it's really just getting in there and throwing as many as you can and seeing what lands.
So with the influencer marketing, is there a way that you can easily track what happens there?
Some platforms will have that. You can see that if there's a post or engagement or backlink or anything that you can have, you can go back and look and see what the traffic is. I mean, the attribution still works reasonably well if you're going that way. If you're going to Amazon affiliates, and obviously they have theirs. If you're doing your own attribution, you can have that. And again, you kind of, it's a little fuzzy. If it's coming from TikTok, it's still unreliable. but other platforms are better, or campaigns, types of campaigns. Again, we talked about earlier, like let's try to do it during a lull, just so we can see and do a study, a case study to see if this type of influencer or this group of influencers works for us. And then we need to warm up the audience. Understanding like a smaller offer or a bigger offer, or which product do we go with first, get them into the brand and say, hey, this product from this brand, recommend, etc. And then we go in and there's a bigger bundle on the product. I'm like, oh, I'll go and purchase that as well. It's kind of like building those funnels and being creative about that. Because if you're trying to push a higher end product or higher AOV product, that might not convert as well as something that's, $15-20, but it gets them into your funnel. It is Amazon, get them into the brand following, the page, etc. Get them to the storefront. I mean, there's so many other ways. It's like, where do you drive your traffic? And that is our recommendation. We do always, if at all possible, try to drive them to your brand store front on Amazon as opposed to your detail page, because once they're in that, it's a little more web page, D2C, if you will, feel, and there's no advertisements for other products in there. And the attribution, if you do it correctly, is usually a little better if we do it that way. It kind of flops back and forth. As soon as you drive them to a PDP, who knows where they click once they go in there. They may not even scroll down and click on another product as soon as you send them as well, where it goes to your storefront page. It's just your brand. You can kind of control that initial experience right out of the gate.
Very cool. Yeah, well, I'm out of questions at that point. I mean, pretty clear. It sounds like you need a lot of different levers. You need to know how to pull them and when to pull them. And as long as you're consistent with that strategy and you're persistent, then sooner or later, it's going to grow, and you'll get there, right?
Absolutely. I'll say that, we used to pull a lot of levers all at once, because when you first come in, you've got this whole like 90 days kind of expectation we're trying to go, and everybody wants to get as much done. And both from checking things off on a list and also being able to see it in the top or bottom line. Where it's trying to understand which levers to pull and keep them as stable as possible. It used to be kind of volatile in the beginning to try to show them, so they could measurably or visually see like what's going on, where's things. Hey, we are spending more, we're spending less, we're spending more here, but spending less here. And now it's saying, hey, let's really kind of narrow and pinpoint down to this so that you can see, and let's focus on this part while we're working on so many other products. And then, hey, this may or may not have worked, but hey, these other 100 things did awesome. And 1% across 100 is 100%, right? Obviously, it's a funny problem, but regardless, that's where we're trying to help them is answer what they want. But we're also working on our hidden agenda, where we know like, hey, this is really where we want it. This is where the potential is. It's not really on their radar. And trying to communicate that to them, saying, hey, we'll do yours. I know this is your priority. We're also going to take a small set that we think, based on our experience, is really where we would put our money first. That's another thing is, hey, if this were my business, how would we go about it right now? If I had just acquired this business, this is day one, and that's how we try to approach it. Obviously, we don't have access to everything that the brand is doing, but we do have access to a growing number of levers, right? We talked about that earlier, not just doing advertising or off Amazon. Now it's content, etc. Getting into external traffic, getting into other marketplaces, etc. So definitely, it's an evolving process. I love it, and keeping up with Amazon is challenging enough. Much less trying to keep up with all the other platforms. That's why I love that we have experts in each platform that we come and can rely on and kind of collaborate and share the knowledge.
Super cool. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. I mean, I don't know if there's too many companies out there that are really trying to do all the things the right way and really just like absorbing a brand and where they're at, and then having this huge list of things that they can potentially do, and really being an expert at saying, all right, let's hold off on this because this is more important. I think many companies, they just try to do it like they have a big budget and they just try to do everything, like you said, all at once. And then a lot of things fail and they say, oh, that didn't work. It's not exactly true. It didn't work then. Let's try it at the right time. So I appreciate you coming on, Mike, and sharing all this, all your experience. You have any last things you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, obviously put a little resource together for your followers here and viewers. Adverio.io /agency ops, agency OPS. And that's our what we've really been working on is a 12 tool checklist that's actually helping brands that we use internally, and we would make it externally available. It's really the first big levers and cohorts that we look at for a brand to get them from that 7 to 8 figures, or to help them get out of their latency. I'm sorry. The staleness of their growth or the profits or whatever it are. It's just to pull those extra levers. It's been fun working on that. The response has been great so far. Definitely want to have your followers have access to that.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. I'll also post it on my LinkedIn just so that URL is available for everybody. Thanks for putting that together for us.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike. I think this is time. So I appreciate once again coming on and sharing everything. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks.